Marcus Thompson checked his watch for the third time. He sat in the waiting area of Tech Vision Solutions, his leather portfolio resting on his lap. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, located in the heart of downtown. Marcus had arrived 15 minutes early for his interview. He wanted to make a good impression. The receptionist, a young woman with blonde hair, had smiled warmly when he first walked in. She asked for his name and told him to take a seat. But when she looked up his appointment and saw his name, her smile faded. She glanced at him, then back at her computer screen. Her friendly tone disappeared. "Someone will be with you shortly," she said coldly, not meeting his eyes. Marcus noticed the change, but tried not to think about it. He had worked too hard to let anything shake his confidence today. He was 28 years old and held a master's degree in computer science from MIT. His resume listed 5 years of experience in software development, 3 published research papers, and a portfolio of impressive projects. He had built apps that thousands of people used daily. He knew he was qualified for this senior developer position. 30 minutes passed. Marcus watched as other people came and went. A young white man arrived for an interview and was taken back immediately. Marcus shifted in his seat. 45 minutes went by. He considered asking the receptionist about the delay, but he stayed calm. He did not want to seem impatient or difficult. Finally, a man and woman emerged from the hallway. The man was tall with slicked back hair and an expensive suit. The woman wore a sharp business dress and held a tablet. They both looked important. "Marcus Thompson?" the man called out, looking around the waiting area as if he expected someone else. "Yes, that's me." Marcus stood up, extending his hand with a professional smile. The man looked at Marcus's hand for a moment before shaking it limply. "I'm Brian Foster, senior recruiter. This is Jennifer Walsh, my colleague." Jennifer barely nodded. Her eyes swept over Marcus with undisguised skepticism. "Follow us," Brian said, turning away without waiting. Marcus followed them down a long hallway. Neither Brian nor Jennifer made small talk. The silence felt heavy and uncomfortable. They led him into a small conference room with a window overlooking the city. Brian and Jennifer sat on one side of the table. Marcus sat across from them, placing his portfolio on the table. "So," Brian said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. "Marcus Thompson. MIT, huh?" "Yes, sir. I graduated 3 years ago with my master's in computer science." Brian exchanged a look with Jennifer. She smirked slightly. "MIT," Brian repeated slowly. "Tell me, was that through one of those special programs? You know, the diversity initiatives they have?" Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He kept his expression neutral. "No, sir. I was accepted based on my academic record and test scores. I graduated with honors." Right, Brian said, not sounding convinced. He did not even glance at the resume in front of him. "And you think you're qualified for a senior position here?" "Yes, I do. I have 5 years of professional experience and my portfolio shows—" "Your portfolio?" Jennifer interrupted, speaking for the first time. Her voice dripped with condescension. "Let me ask you something. Are you sure you're in the right building? The janitorial applications are handled through a different entrance." Marcus froze. He could not believe what he just heard. Brian chuckled quietly, not bothering to hide his amusement. "I'm here for the senior software developer position," Marcus said firmly, fighting to keep his voice steady. "The one posted on your website last month." "Oh, we know what position you applied for," Jennifer said, scrolling through her tablet without really looking at it. "We're just trying to figure out if there was some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake," Marcus replied. "I have my credentials right here. I've built several successful applications. I can show you my GitHub repository, my published work." "That won't be necessary." Brian cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Let's just get through this quickly. Tell us about your experience." Marcus took a deep breath. He launched into his prepared summary, describing the systems he had designed, the teams he had led, the problems he had solved. He talked about machine learning algorithms he had developed and platforms he had optimized. As he spoke, he watched Brian and Jennifer. Neither of them was really listening. Brian stared out the window. Jennifer typed on her phone, barely hiding it under the table. When Marcus mentioned a particularly complex project he had completed, Jennifer actually yawned. "Are you finished?" Brian asked when Marcus paused. "I have more to share if you'd like to see my portfolio." "We've heard enough," Jennifer said quickly. "Tell me, Do you actually know how to code, or did someone help you with all these projects you're claiming? The question hit Marcus like a slap. His jaw clenched. He had spent countless nights teaching himself programming languages. He had worked through college, graduated at the top of his class, earned his place at MIT, and built his career through pure determination and skill. I wrote every line of code myself, Marcus said quietly. His eyes locked on Jennifer's. I can prove it. Sure you can, Brian said with fake cheerfulness. Look, Marcus, let's be real here. This is a competitive position. We need someone who can actually handle the workload. Someone who fits our company culture. Marcus understood exactly what Brian meant by company culture. He had heard those words before, used the same way. They were code words. I'm more than capable of handling any challenge you give me, Marcus said, refusing to back down. Jennifer sighed dramatically. This really isn't going to work out. We have very high standards here at TechVision. May I at least show you my portfolio? Marcus opened his leather case and pulled out a folder containing printed examples of his work, screenshots of applications and reference letters from previous employers and professors. Brian barely glanced at it. That's okay. We have everything we need. The interview had lasted less than 10 minutes. Marcus could not believe it was ending so quickly. He had prepared for hours, practiced his answers, researched the company thoroughly. He had been excited about this opportunity. TechVision Solutions was one of the top tech companies in the city. So that's it? Marcus asked, unable to hide his frustration. We'll be in touch, Jennifer said in a tone that clearly meant they would not be in touch. Brian stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. We have other candidates to see today. You can show yourself out. Marcus gathered his things slowly, his hands steady despite the anger building inside him. He stood and looked both Brian and Jennifer in the eyes. Thank you for your time, he said with dignity, refusing to let them see how much they had hurt him. Neither of them responded. They had already turned away, talking quietly to each other and laughing about something. Marcus walked out of the conference room, down the long hallway, and past the receptionist who did not look up. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, taking deep breaths. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone. He opened his notes app and began typing everything that had happened. Every insult, every dismissive look, every cruel word. He documented it all. People walked past him on the busy street, rushing to their own appointments and meetings. None of them knew what had just happened. None of them saw the humiliation Marcus had endured. But Marcus was not defeated. As he walked to his car, something hardened inside him. He had faced obstacles his whole life. This was just another one. The difference was that this time he was not going to just move on and forget. This time, something was going to change. He got in his car and sat for a moment, staring at the TechVision building. Somewhere in there, Brian and Jennifer were probably laughing about him. They probably thought they would never see him again. They thought he was nobody. Marcus started his car and pulled into traffic. They were wrong about him. They were completely wrong, and one day he promised himself they would realize just how wrong they were. Marcus drove home in silence. His mind replayed every moment of that terrible interview. When he reached his apartment, a modest one-bedroom in an older building, he sat in his car for several minutes. He needed to calm down before going inside. His mother was visiting for dinner. She would know immediately that something was wrong. Marcus took a deep breath, grabbed his briefcase, and headed upstairs. Baby, you're home. His mother, Diana Thompson, was in the kitchen. The smell of her famous pot roast filled the small apartment. She turned from the stove and her smile faded instantly. What happened? Marcus set down his briefcase and hugged her. Diana was 60 years old but looked younger. Years of hard work had not taken away her warmth and strength. She had raised Marcus alone after his father left when Marcus was 5 years old. The interview didn't go well, Marcus said quietly. Diana pulled back and looked at her son's face. She had seen that expression before. Tell me, Marcus told her everything. As he spoke, his mother's expression changed from concern to anger to sadness. When he finished, she wrapped her arms around him again. Those ignorant people, she whispered. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you've accomplished. It doesn't matter what I've accomplished, Mom, Marcus said, pulling away. They saw my skin color and decided I wasn't worth their time. Diana cupped her son's face in her hands. Listen to me. I worked 2 jobs to put you through school. I cleaned houses during the day and waited tables at night. You know why? Because I knew you were special. I knew you were brilliant. And you proved it. MET, Marcus, you graduated from MIT. You built things that people use every day. Don't you dare let those small-minded people make you doubt yourself. Marcus nodded, but his mother's words could not completely erase the sting of humiliation he felt. They ate dinner quietly. Afterward, Marcus sat at his laptop while his mother cleaned the kitchen. He stared at the screen, not really seeing it. For the past 6 months, he had been working on something in his spare time. A side project. An idea that had been growing in his mind. It was a software platform for recruitment, but not just any recruitment system. His platform used artificial intelligence to screen candidates without showing their names, photos, or any identifying information. Only their skills, experience, and qualifications would matter. He called it Fair Hire. Marcus had been developing it slowly, working late at night after his regular job at another tech company. He had a good position there, with good pay and benefits. It was safe and stable. But after what happened today, something clicked in his mind. He did not want safe anymore. He wanted to change things. "Mom," Marcus called out. Diana came to the living room, drying her hands on a dish towel. "What if I quit my job and worked on my own company?" Diana sat down beside him. "Tell me about it," Marcus explained Fair Hire. He showed her the prototype he had built. He explained how his system would eliminate bias in hiring by focusing only on what really mattered, skills and qualifications. Companies using his platform would find better employees because they would not be blinded by prejudice. "How much money do you have saved?" Diana asked practically. "About $30,000. Maybe enough for a year if I'm careful. And if it doesn't work, then I'll find another job. But Mom, I have to try. What happened today, that happens to people every single day. People who are qualified, people who deserve opportunities, get rejected because of how they look or where they come from. I can't change everyone's minds, but I can build a system that takes bias out of the equation." Diana was quiet for a long moment. She thought about all the times she had been overlooked, dismissed, or treated as less than. She thought about the sacrifices she had made for her son. Then she smiled. "Do it," she said. "Take the risk. You'll regret it if you don't try." 3 weeks later, Marcus turned in his resignation at his job. His boss was shocked. His coworkers thought he was crazy. He had a promising career ahead of him at the company. Why would he throw it away? Marcus did not explain. He just thanked them for the opportunity and left. The first few months were brutal. Marcus worked from his apartment, coding 18 hours a day. He survived on instant noodles, cheap coffee, and determination. He maxed out his credit cards buying server space and software licenses. His savings dwindled rapidly. His mother visited every Sunday, bringing home-cooked meals and words of encouragement. She never doubted him, even when Marcus doubted himself. The platform slowly took shape. Marcus built every feature carefully, testing and refining. He made the interface clean and simple. He trained the AI algorithms to recognize genuine skills and experience. He added security features to protect user data. After 6 months, he had a working product. Now he needed customers. Marcus spent his days reaching out to companies, trying to get meetings. Most ignored him. Some took meetings out of curiosity but were not interested. A few were openly skeptical that a one-man operation could provide something valuable. "Come back when you have a real company," one executive told him. Marcus refused to give up. He refined his pitch. He offered free trials. He showed data on how bias was costing companies money by making them overlook talented candidates. Slowly, a few small businesses agreed to try his platform. The results were remarkable. Companies using Fair Hire reported finding better candidates than they had through traditional methods. They discovered talented people they would have normally passed over. Word began to spread. 14 months after that terrible interview at TechVision, Marcus got the call that would change everything. A venture capital firm wanted to meet with him. They had heard about Fair Hire from several clients who praised the platform. Marcus put on his best suit, the same one he had worn to that interview at TechVision. He walked into the sleek offices of Horizon Ventures with his head high. 3 partners sat across from him in a conference room. Unlike Brian and Jennifer, they actually listened. They asked smart questions. They reviewed his data carefully. They tested the platform themselves. "This is impressive," said Catherine Chen, the lead partner. "You built all of this yourself?" "Yes, ma'am. Every line of code. Why? What made you decide to tackle this particular problem?" Marcus hesitated. Then he told them the truth. He told them about the interview at Tech Vision. He told them about the racism he had faced and witnessed. He explained that he wanted to create a tool that would make hiring fair for everyone. The partners exchanged looks. Catherine leaned forward. "Mr. Thompson, we'd like to invest $5 million in Fair Hire. We believe in your vision and we believe in you." Marcus could barely speak. $5 million. It was more money than he had ever imagined. It meant he could hire a team. It meant he could scale the platform. It meant his idea could actually change the industry. "There's one condition," Catherine added. "You stay as CEO. This is your company, your vision. We're just here to help you build it." Marcus signed the deal 1 week later. He called his mother from the parking lot of the law office where they had finalized the paperwork. "We did it, Mom," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "We actually did it," Diana cried on the other end of the phone. "No, baby. You did it. I always knew you would." That night, Marcus sat in his apartment and thought about Brian and Jennifer. He wondered if they knew what they had done. They had tried to break him down to make him feel worthless. Instead, they had lit a fire inside him that could not be put out. He opened his laptop and looked at the documentation from that interview. He had kept every note. He had remembered every insult. Not for revenge, but as motivation. Those notes had pushed him forward on the hardest days. Now Marcus was the CEO of a funded startup with real potential. He had a product that worked and investors who believed in him. He had proven wrong every person who had ever doubted him. But this was just the beginning. Marcus had bigger plans. He wanted Fair Hire to become the standard for recruitment everywhere. He wanted to change entire industries. He wanted to make sure that what happened to him never happened to anyone else. Marcus closed his laptop and looked around his small apartment. Soon, he would be able to afford a bigger place. He could buy his mother a house. He could hire talented people and give them opportunities they deserved. More than anything, he had proven something to himself. When the world tried to push him down, he had stood back up. When doors were slammed in his face, he had built his own door. When people told him he was not good enough, he had shown them just how wrong they were. The memory of that interview still hurt. It probably always would, but Marcus had transformed that pain into purpose. He had turned humiliation into motivation, and he was just getting started. 2 years had passed since Marcus founded Fair Hire. The small startup he had run from his apartment was now a company with 200 employees and offices in 3 cities. Marcus stood in the main office watching his team work. The space was modern and open, filled with talented people who believed in the mission. "Marcus, you have a call with Forbes in 10 minutes. His assistant Rachel reminded him. "They want to interview you for their 30 Under 30 feature." Marcus nodded. He had done dozens of interviews in recent months. Major news outlets wanted to know about the young CEO who had disrupted the recruitment industry. Business magazines wrote articles about his innovative approach. Tech blogs analyzed his platform's algorithms. Fair Hire had grown beyond Marcus's wildest dreams. Over 500 companies now used the platform. Fortune 500 corporations had adopted it for their hiring processes. The results spoke for themselves. Companies reported finding more qualified candidates, building more diverse teams, and reducing turnover rates. The numbers were impressive. Fair Hire generated $50 million in revenue last year. Marcus had hired the best engineers, designers, and salespeople. He had built a company culture based on respect, fairness, and excellence. Everyone in the company, from executives to entry-level staff, was treated with dignity. Marcus's mother had retired from her jobs. He had bought her a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. She spent her days gardening and volunteering at the community center. She was proud of her son, but more importantly, she was happy. Marcus himself had changed. He dressed in expensive suits now. He attended conferences and gave speeches. People recognized him on the street. But success had not changed his core values. He remembered where he came from and why he started Fair Hire. "The Forbes reporter is on line 1, Rachel called out. Marcus took the call in his private office. The reporter asked him about his journey, his challenges, and his vision for the future. Near the end of the interview, the reporter asked the question that everyone wanted to know. "What inspired you to create Fair Hire? What made you focus on eliminating bias in hiring?" Marcus paused. He had answered this question many times, usually with a diplomatic response about seeing opportunities for improvement in the industry. But today he decided to be honest. I experienced discrimination firsthand, Marcus said quietly. I went to an interview where I was mocked and dismissed because of my race. Those recruiters never gave me a fair chance. They didn't look at my qualifications or my experience. They judged me based on how I looked. That day changed my life. It made me realize that if I could face that kind of treatment with all my credentials and education, imagine what others were going through. I built Fair Hire to make sure skills and talent matter more than bias and prejudice. The reporter was silent for a moment. That's a powerful story. Did you ever hear from those recruiters again? No, Marcus said. I never heard from them or that company again. What Marcus did not know was that the company, Tech Vision Solutions, had fallen apart. 6 months after Marcus's interview, 3 other candidates came forward with similar stories of discrimination. One filed a lawsuit, then another. Local news picked up the story. Tech Vision's reputation was destroyed. Major clients pulled their contracts. The company's stock price crashed. Talented employees left for other opportunities. Within a year, Tech Vision had lost 70% of its business. The company filed for bankruptcy protection and eventually shut down completely. Brian Foster and Jennifer Walsh, the recruiters who had mocked Marcus, found themselves unemployed. At first, they were not worried. They had years of experience in recruitment. They assumed finding new jobs would be easy. They were wrong. News about Tech Vision's discrimination scandal had spread throughout the industry. Brian and Jennifer's names were mentioned in several articles. Other companies did not want to risk hiring recruiters with such public controversies attached to their names. Months passed. Brian and Jennifer sent out hundreds of resumes. They got very few responses. The interviews they did get did not go well. As soon as their connection to Tech Vision came up, the conversation ended. Their savings ran out. Credit card bills piled up. Brian's wife had to take a second job. Jennifer moved out of her apartment and back in with her parents at age 35. They applied for positions far below their experience level, but even those companies rejected them. The irony was not lost on either of them. They had spent years judging candidates, deciding who deserved opportunities and who did not. Now they were the ones being judged and found wanting. They were the ones being rejected without fair consideration. Marcus knew none of this. He was focused on growing Fair Hire. The company was preparing to launch in international markets. They had developed new features for the platform. Marcus was considering another round of funding to accelerate expansion. We need more space, his COO, David Park, told him during a strategy meeting. The team is growing faster than expected. We're running out of room in this building. Marcus had been thinking about this problem. Fair Hire had grown so quickly that their current office could not accommodate everyone comfortably. They needed a headquarters building that reflected their success and could house future growth. After weeks of searching, Marcus found the perfect building. It was a newly renovated 8-story structure in the business district. The location was excellent with easy access to public transportation. The space was modern and flexible, perfect for a tech company. This is it, Marcus said as he toured the empty building with his leadership team. This will be our new home. The move would take 3 months to plan and execute. They needed to set up IT infrastructure, design the office layout, and coordinate the relocation of 200 employees. They also needed to hire facilities staff to maintain the building. I want to make sure we treat our facilities team well, Marcus told his HR director, Sarah Chen. Good wages, full benefits, respect. Everyone who works here, regardless of their position, is valuable. Sarah nodded. She had worked for Marcus for 18 months and understood his values. I'll create job postings for maintenance workers, janitors, and security staff. What's our budget? Whatever it takes to hire good people and pay them fairly, Marcus replied. Sarah posted the openings online. Within days, applications flooded in. The economy was tough and many people were looking for stable work with good benefits. Sarah and her team began screening candidates. Among the applications, 2 names appeared that would change everything. Brian Foster and Jennifer Walsh had both applied for janitorial positions at Fair Hire. They had been unemployed for 8 months. They were desperate. They needed any job they could get. Brian and Jennifer did not know they were applying to Marcus's company. They did not recognize the name Fair Hire or connect it to the young man they had dismissed so cruelly 3 years ago. They only knew that the job posting offered decent pay and benefits. They also did not include their employment at Tech Vision on their resumes. They were ashamed of that connection and hoped to hide it from potential employers. They listed other previous jobs and tried to explain their employment gap with vague references to seeking new opportunities and personal circumstances. Crow. Chen conducted phone screenings with dozens of applicants. Brian and Jennifer were polite and humble during their calls. They sounded desperate but professional. They emphasized their willingness to work hard and learn. Sarah scheduled them for in-person interviews. As Sarah updated her interview schedule, she mentioned several candidate names to Marcus during their weekly check-in meeting. She went through a long list of people scheduled for various positions. For the facilities team, we have some strong candidates, Sarah said, scrolling through her notes. I'm interviewing Jennifer Walsh and Brian Foster tomorrow for janitorial positions. Both have some relevant experience. Marcus, who had been reviewing a financial report, froze. He looked up sharply. What were those names again? Jennifer Walsh and Brian Foster. Why do you know them? Marcus's heart was pounding. It could not be the same people. Foster and Walsh were common names. It had to be a coincidence. Can you pull up their applications? Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. Sarah opened her laptop and brought up both files. She turned the screen toward Marcus. There they were. Brian Foster, age 37. Jennifer Walsh, age 35. Their profile pictures showed older, more tired versions of the people Marcus remembered. It was them. The same recruiters who had humiliated him were now applying for janitorial jobs at his company. Marcus sat back in his chair, his mind racing. What were the chances? Out of all the companies in the city, they had applied here. They had no idea who owned Fair Hire. They did not know they were asking for a job from the man they had mocked. Marcus? Sarah looked concerned. Do you know these people? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would surprise everyone, including himself. Yes, I know them, Marcus said slowly. Change their interviews. I'll conduct them personally. You? Sarah was shocked. Marcus, you don't interview for facilities positions. You have too much on your schedule. I'll make time, Marcus said firmly. Schedule them for this week. And Sarah, don't tell them who will be interviewing them. Just give them the time and location. Sarah agreed, though she was confused. She had never seen Marcus take such a personal interest in entry-level hiring. Marcus spent the next 2 days thinking about what he would do. Part of him wanted to reject their applications immediately. They deserved it after what they had done to him. But another part of him, the part shaped by his mother's values and his own experiences, wondered if this was an opportunity for something more meaningful than simple revenge. He thought about the principles Fair Hire was built on. Fairness. Second chances. Judging people on merit, not prejudice. If he simply rejected Brian and Jennifer out of spite, would he be any better than they had been? Marcus did not have all the answers, but he knew one thing. This interview would be very different from the one they had given him 3 years ago. This time Marcus held all the power, and what he chose to do with that power would define not just their futures but his own character as well. Brian Foster sat in his car outside the Fair Hire headquarters building, trying to calm his nerves. He was 40 minutes early for his interview. He could not afford to be late. He needed this job desperately. The past 8 months had been the worst of his life. After TechVision collapsed, Brian had sent out over 300 resumes. He got maybe a dozen responses. The interviews he did get ended badly once his connection to TechVision came up. The discrimination scandal had made him toxic in the recruitment industry. His savings were gone. His retirement account was depleted. His wife, Linda, had taken a second job as a cashier to help pay the bills. They had 2 kids in middle school who needed clothes, school supplies, and activities. But Brian could barely afford groceries. Last month, they got an eviction notice. They were 3 months behind on rent. Linda cried when she read the letter. Brian felt like a failure as a husband and father. He had always been the breadwinner, the successful professional. Now he was applying for janitorial jobs and hoping someone would give him a chance. The job posting for Fair Hire had offered $15 an hour plus benefits. It was not much, but it was more than nothing. Brian would clean toilets if it meant keeping a roof over his family's head. Pride was a luxury he could not afford anymore. He looked at himself in the rearview mirror. His suit was 5 years old and did not fit as well as it used to. He had lost weight from stress. His hair was graying at the temples. He looked older than his 37 years. Brian got out of the car and walked toward the building. It was impressive, modern, and clean. The lobby had high ceilings and contemporary furniture. A security guard directed him to the fourth floor. The receptionist smiled warmly and offered him coffee. "Mr. Foster, please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Brian sat down, holding his folder with his thin resume. He had left Tech Vision off completely and tried to fill the gaps with vague explanations. He hoped no one would dig too deeply into his employment history. 15 minutes later, a woman appeared. "Brian Foster? I'm Sarah Chen, HR Director. Follow me, please." Brian followed her down a hallway. The office was busy with young, energetic employees working at their desks. Everyone looked happy and engaged. This seemed like a good place to work, even as a janitor. Sarah led him to a conference room. "Please wait here. Your interviewer will be with you in a moment." Brian sat down, his hands sweating. He reviewed his prepared answers in his mind. He had to make a good impression. This might be his last chance. The door opened. A man walked in and Brian's blood turned to ice. It was Marcus Thompson, older, more confident, wearing an expensive suit. But it was definitely him. The same man Brian had mocked and dismissed 3 years ago at Tech Vision. The man whose resume Brian had barely glanced at. The man Jennifer had suggested should apply for janitorial jobs instead. Marcus closed the door and sat down across from Brian. His expression was calm and unreadable. He did not say anything at first. He just looked at Brian, letting the silence grow heavy and uncomfortable. Brian's mind raced. Marcus owned this company. Marcus was the CEO. How had Brian not known this? He had seen the name Marcus Thompson on the company website, but had not made the connection. Common name, he had thought, never imagining it was the same person. "Mr. Foster," Marcus finally said, his voice professional and cool. "Thank you for coming in today. Tell me about yourself." Brian's mouth was dry. Should he acknowledge what happened? Should he pretend not to recognize Marcus? Should he apologize? He decided to proceed with the interview as planned. Maybe Marcus did not remember him. It had been 3 years. Marcus must have met thousands of people since then. I have 15 years of experience in various professional roles," Brian began, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm a hard worker. I'm reliable. I need this job and I promise I'll do excellent work." Marcus nodded slowly. "What kind of professional roles?" Brian hesitated. "Human resources, recruitment, corporate settings." "Interesting," Marcus said. "And now you're applying for a janitorial position. That's quite a change." "Yes, sir. The economy has been difficult. I'm willing to work hard at any honest job." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about your most recent position. Where did you work before?" This was the question Brian had been dreading. He could lie, but lying on a job application was grounds for immediate dismissal if discovered. He could tell the truth and probably lose any chance at this job. "I worked at Tech Vision Solutions," Brian admitted quietly. "Until it closed down." "Tech Vision," Marcus repeated. "I've heard of that company. Wasn't there some kind of scandal?" Brian's face burned with shame. "Yes, sir. There were some issues, complaints about discrimination in hiring practices." "Were you involved in those practices, Mr. Foster?" The question hung in the air. Brian looked down at his hands. He could feel Marcus's eyes on him. "Yes," Brian whispered. "I was." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you remember a candidate named Marcus Thompson who interviewed at Tech Vision 3 years ago?" Brian's head snapped up. His worst fear was confirmed. Marcus remembered everything. Brian started, but his voice failed him. He cleared his throat. "Yes, I remember." "Tell me about that interview," Marcus said, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel underneath. Brian wanted to run out of the room. He wanted to disappear, but he was trapped. He owed Marcus the truth even if it cost him this job. "We treated you terribly," Brian said, his voice breaking. "We were dismissive, disrespectful, racist. We didn't give you a fair chance. We mocked your credentials and made cruel jokes. It was wrong. It was completely wrong." Marcus listened without interrupting. His expression did not change. "Why did you do it?" Marcus asked. Brian thought about the question. Why had he done it? The easy answer was that he had been raised with certain prejudices. His father had been a bigot. Brian had absorbed those attitudes without questioning them. At Tech Vision, the company culture encouraged that kind of behavior. Management looked the other way. Brian had convinced himself that he was just doing his job, maintaining standards. But those were excuses. The truth was simpler and uglier. I was a small person, Brian said honestly. I felt powerful when I made others feel small. I had prejudices that I never examined or challenged. I thought I was better than people who were different from me. I was wrong about everything. And I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I am truly sorry for what I did to you. Marcus was silent. He studied Brian's face, looking for signs of dishonesty. But Brian was not lying. He looked broken, humbled, and genuinely remorseful. Do you know what happened after that interview? Marcus asked. I assume you found a better job elsewhere, Brian said. I did, Marcus agreed. I started my own company. This company, Fair Hire, exists because of people like you, Mr. Foster. Because of recruiters who judge candidates based on bias instead of merit. Because of the discrimination that keeps talented people from opportunities they deserve. Brian felt tears welling up in his eyes. The irony was crushing. He had helped create the very problem that Marcus had built a company to solve. He had been so wrong, so cruel, and now he was facing the consequences. I don't expect you to give me this job, Brian said quietly. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that losing everything has taught me more than success ever did. I've learned what it feels like to be judged unfairly, to be rejected without a real chance, to be desperate and powerless. I understand now what I put you through. I understand what I put dozens of other candidates through over the years. I will carry that shame for the rest of my life. Marcus opened a folder and pulled out a document. It was the notes Marcus had typed on his phone 3 years ago, right after leaving TechVision. Every detail of that humiliating interview was documented. I kept this, Marcus said, sliding it across the table. I read it whenever I felt like giving up on Fair Hire. Your cruelty motivated me. It pushed me to succeed. Brian read the notes with growing horror. Seeing his own words and actions documented so clearly was painful. He had been a terrible person. I'm glad something good came from it, Brian said, pushing the document back. You built something important. You're helping people. That matters more than my career or my comfort. Marcus took the document and put it back in the folder. He studied Brian for another long moment. Then he spoke. Mr. Foster, I'm going to ask you some questions. Answer them honestly. Of course. If I hire you, will you treat everyone here with respect? The engineers, the executives, the cleaning crew, the security guards? Everyone? Yes, Brian said firmly. Absolutely. Will you be on time, work hard, and take pride in doing your job well even though it's cleaning floors and bathrooms? Yes, sir. I'll be the best janitor you've ever had. If you see discrimination or unfair treatment happening in this company, will you speak up about it? Brian nodded. I will. I've seen where silence leads. I won't be silent anymore. Marcus leaned forward. One more question. Why should I hire you after what you did to me? It was a fair question. Brian thought about it carefully before answering. You shouldn't, Brian admitted. You have every right to send me away. But if you do hire me, I promise I'll spend every day trying to become a better person. I'll work harder than anyone. And I'll never forget the lesson you're teaching me by even considering giving me a chance. Marcus stood up. Brian thought the interview was over. He prepared himself for rejection. The job pays $15 an hour to start, Marcus said. Full benefits after 90 days. Your shift would be 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. You'd be part of a 4-person facilities team responsible for maintaining this building. It's honest work, but it's hard work. Are you interested? Brian could not believe what he was hearing. Was Marcus actually offering him the job? Yes, Brian said quickly. Yes, I'm very interested. You'll start on probation, Marcus continued. 3 months. If your performance is good, you'll become a permanent employee. But understand this, Mr. Foster, I'll be watching.
Any hint of the behavior you showed at TechVision and you're done.
One chance. That's all you get. One chance is more than I deserve, Brian said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcus extended his hand. Brian shook it, gripping firmly. When he had shaken Marcus's hand 3 years ago, it had been limp and dismissive. This time it was an honest handshake between two men. Don't thank me yet, Marcus said. Prove you've changed. That's all I want to see. Brian left the office in a daze. He sat in his car for 10 minutes before he could drive. He called his wife. Linda, he said when she answered. I got the job. I start next week, his wife cried with relief. But Brian was crying for a different reason. Marcus Thompson had given him something he did not deserve, a second chance. and Brian was determined not to waste it. Jennifer Walsh arrived at the Fair Hire building 2 days after Brian's interview. She was nervous but hopeful. The phone screening had gone well and the HR person had sounded encouraging. Jennifer needed this job as much as Brian did. Her fall from success had been just as brutal. After TechVision collapsed, Jennifer had struggled to find work. Her name was attached to the discrimination scandal. Recruiters who Googled her found news articles about the lawsuits and complaints. Companies wanted nothing to do with her. She had burned through her savings in 4 months. Her nice apartment became too expensive. She moved back in with her parents, who lived in a small 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. At 35 years old, she was sleeping in her childhood bedroom, sharing a bathroom with her retired parents. The shame was overwhelming. Jennifer had always been ambitious and successful. She had prided herself on her career achievements. Now she was unemployed, broke, and living with her parents like a teenager. She had applied for dozens of jobs, including several janitorial positions. Most never responded. The Fair Hire opportunity was the first real interview she had gotten in weeks. She arrived 30 minutes early, dressed in her best outfit, desperate to make a good impression. The receptionist directed her to the 4th floor. Sarah Chen greeted her warmly and led her to a conference room. "Wait here," Sarah said. "Your interviewer will be with you shortly." Jennifer sat down and tried to calm her breathing. She practiced her answers in her head. She had to get this job. Her parents were kind, but she could see the disappointment in their eyes. She needed to prove she could take care of herself. The door opened. Jennifer looked up and felt her stomach drop. Marcus Thompson walked in wearing an expensive suit and an unreadable expression. Jennifer recognized him instantly. How could she forget? She had been so cruel to him. She had suggested he apply for janitorial positions as an insult. Now here she was, actually applying for one, and Marcus was the person interviewing her. "Ms. Walsh," Marcus said, sitting down across from her. "Thank you for coming." Jennifer's hands trembled. She clasped them together in her lap, trying to hide her nervousness. Marcus did not look angry. He looked calm, professional, but there was something in his eyes. He remembered everything. "Tell me about yourself," Marcus said. Jennifer's mind went blank. What could she possibly say? She had treated this man terribly. She had judged him without giving him a fair chance. She had been part of a system that discriminated against people like him. And now she was sitting across from him asking for mercy. I have experience in human resources and recruitment," Jennifer began, her voice shaking. "I'm looking for a fresh start. I'm willing to work hard at any position." "Any position?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Even a janitorial position?" The question stung. Jennifer knew he was referencing what she had said to him 3 years ago. She deserved this, yes, she said quietly. "Even that?" "Interesting," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. "You worked at TechVision Solutions, correct?" Jennifer's throat tightened. "Yes. The company that was involved in a discrimination scandal. Multiple lawsuits. Eventually shut down." "Yes," Jennifer whispered. "Were you part of the recruitment team that discriminated against candidates?" Jennifer wanted to lie. She wanted to make excuses, to blame others, to minimize her role. But she could not. Marcus deserved the truth, yes, she admitted. "I was." Marcus pulled out a document. Jennifer recognized it immediately. It was the same notes Brian had seen. The documentation of Marcus's interview at TechVision. Her cruel words were written there in black and white. "Do you remember this interview, Ms. Walsh?" Marcus asked. Jennifer felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them back. "Yes, I remember." "Tell me what you remember." Jennifer took a shaky breath. "We treated you horribly." "I treated you horribly." "I was dismissive, rude, and racist. I suggested you were in the wrong building. I questioned whether you actually earned your degree. I didn't look at your qualifications or give you a fair chance. I judged you based on your appearance, not your abilities." "Why?" Marcus asked simply. It was the same question he had asked Brian. Jennifer had spent months thinking about this. In her darkest moments, lying awake in her childhood bedroom, she had examined her own behavior and beliefs. "I grew up in a privileged environment," Jennifer said slowly. "My parents had money. I went to private schools. I was surrounded by people who looked like me and thought like me. I never questioned my assumptions. I never examined my prejudices. At TechVision, that behavior was normalized. Everyone did it. Management encouraged it. I told myself I was maintaining standards, protecting the company's reputation. But that was a lie. The truth is, I felt superior to people who were different from me. I used my position to make myself feel powerful. I hurt people because I could. Marcus listened without interrupting. Jennifer continued. After Tech Vision collapsed, I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my savings, my reputation. I had to move back in with my parents. I've been unemployed for 8 months. I've sent out hundreds of applications. Most companies won't even interview me. The ones that do reject me as soon as they find out about my connection to Tech Vision. Now you know how it feels, Marcus said quietly. Jennifer nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Yes, now I know exactly how it feels to be judged unfairly, to be rejected without a real chance, to be desperate and powerless. I understand what I put you through. I understand what I put dozens of other people through over the years. And I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I am truly deeply sorry. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He studied Jennifer's face. She was not the same arrogant, cruel person who had interviewed him 3 years ago. She looked tired, humbled, and genuinely remorseful. Do you know what happened after that interview? Marcus asked. No, Jennifer admitted. I never thought about you again after that day. I'm ashamed to admit that. You were just another rejected candidate to me. I didn't care what happened to you. I went home that day and documented everything you and Brian Foster said to me, Marcus explained. I kept those notes. I read them whenever I needed motivation. Your cruelty pushed me to start my own company. Fair Hire exists because of people like you, because of recruiters who let bias and prejudice determine who gets opportunities and who doesn't. Jennifer felt a new wave of shame wash over her. I helped create the very problem you're trying to solve. Yes, Marcus agreed. You did. I don't expect you to give me this job, Jennifer said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I don't deserve your kindness or your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I've changed. Losing everything forced me to see who I really was, and I didn't like what I saw. I've spent the past 8 months trying to become a better person. I volunteer at a community center 3 days a week. I've been reading books about systemic racism and implicit bias. I'm trying to understand and unlearn the prejudices I've carried my whole life. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but I'm trying to be better. Marcus pulled out 2 files. He opened the first one. Brian Foster had his interview with me 2 days ago. He told me about his experience at Tech Vision. He apologized for his behavior. He asked for a chance to prove he's changed. Jennifer's eyes widened. Brian applied here too? Yes, and I hired him. Jennifer could not believe what she was hearing. After everything Brian had done, Marcus had given him a job? Why? Jennifer asked. Because I believe in second chances, Marcus said. Because Fair Hire is built on the principle that everyone deserves to be judged fairly. Because I've thought a lot about what it means to be successful. Real success isn't just about making money or building a big company. It's about what kind of person you choose to be when you have power. Marcus opened the second file. It was a job offer letter with Jennifer's name on it. The job pays $15 an hour to start, Marcus said. Full benefits after 90 days. Your shift would be 2 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. You'd work on the evening facilities crew. Different from Brian's shift. It's honest work. It's hard work. Are you interested? Jennifer stared at the document in shock. Was this really happening? Was Marcus actually offering her a job after what she had done to him? Why are you doing this? Jennifer asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you're not the same person who interviewed me 3 years ago, Marcus said. I can see that. You've examined yourself and your behavior. You've tried to change. That matters. But understand this, Ms. Walsh. You're on probation for 3 months. Any sign of the behavior you showed at Tech Vision, any discrimination, any disrespect toward anyone in this company, and you're done. 1 chance. That's all you get. 1 chance is more than I deserve, Jennifer said, echoing Brian's words from 2 days earlier. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but it's the chance I'm giving you. Don't waste it. Jennifer took the job offer with shaking hands. She looked at Marcus, this man she had mocked and belittled, who was now showing her more grace and compassion than she had ever shown anyone. Why? She asked again. Why are you being so kind to me? Marcus thought about the question. He thought about his mother, who had worked 2 jobs to give him opportunities. He thought about the discrimination he had faced throughout his life. He thought about the purpose of fair hire. Because someone has to break the cycle, Marcus said finally. Someone has to choose compassion over revenge. Someone has to believe that people can change. I'm choosing to be that person. But you have to do your part. You have to actually change. You have to be better than who you were. I will, Jennifer promised. I swear I will. Marcus stood up and extended his hand. Jennifer stood and shook it. 3 years ago, she had barely acknowledged his existence. Now she was shaking his hand as an equal, grateful for the opportunity he was giving her. I'll see you next Monday, Marcus said. Don't be late. Jennifer left the office in a daze. She sat in her car and cried for 20 minutes. She cried for the person she used to be. She cried for the people she had hurt. She cried with relief and gratitude for this unexpected second chance. That evening, she told her parents about the interview. She told them the whole story, including the terrible things she had done to Marcus 3 years ago. Her mother was quiet for a long time. This man gave you something precious, her mother finally said. He gave you the chance to become who you should have been all along. Don't waste it. I won't, Jennifer promised. The following Monday, both Brian and Jennifer started their first day at Fair Hire. They arrived early wearing their work uniforms. Neither of them had ever worked as janitors before. It was humbling, but they approached it with determination. They did not work the same shift, so they rarely saw each other, but they both understood the incredible gift they had been given. They had been cruel to Marcus Thompson when he was powerless. Now that he had all the power, he chose mercy instead of revenge. That choice would change both of their lives forever. 6 months passed. Brian Foster arrived at Fair Hire headquarters every morning at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes before his shift started. He changed into his work uniform, grabbed his cleaning supplies, and got to work. He cleaned bathrooms, mopped floors, emptied trash cans, and wiped down conference rooms. It was hard physical work that left him exhausted at the end of each day, but Brian never complained. He took pride in doing his job well. The bathrooms sparkled, the floors shined. The conference rooms were always ready for meetings. Other employees noticed his dedication and often thanked him for keeping the building clean. Brian's co-workers on the facilities team were good people. They treated him with respect and welcomed him as part of the crew. They did not know about his past or his connection to Marcus. To them, he was just Brian, the hard-working guy who always showed up early and stayed late when needed. Jennifer Walsh worked the evening shift. She arrived at 1:45 p.m. every day and worked until the building closed. She vacuumed offices, cleaned the cafeteria, sanitized workstations, and took out the recycling. Like Brian, she worked hard and took pride in her job. The evening facilities crew was smaller, just 2 people. Jennifer worked alongside Miguel, a 50-year-old immigrant who had been doing maintenance work for 20 years. Miguel was kind and patient, teaching Jennifer the best techniques for different cleaning tasks. "You're a good worker," Miguel told her one evening. "Many people think this job is beneath them, but honest work is never beneath anyone." Jennifer thought about that often. 6 months ago, she would have looked down on people like Miguel. She would have considered herself better than a janitor. Now she understood that a person's worth had nothing to do with their job title. Both Brian and Jennifer underwent mandatory training that all Fair Hire employees received. It included modules on diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. The training was developed by Marcus himself, based on principles that drove his company. Brian sat through the training with tears in his eyes. The examples used in the presentations could have been taken directly from his own behavior at TechVision. He saw himself in every case study about discriminatory hiring practices. The training showed him the real harm his actions had caused, not just to individuals, but to entire organizations and communities. Jennifer attended the same training during her onboarding. She took notes throughout the sessions and asked questions. She wanted to understand. She needed to understand. After years of operating on autopilot, accepting prejudiced attitudes without examination, she was finally learning to see clearly. Marcus watched both of them from a distance. He did not micromanage or hover, but he was aware of their progress. His assistant, Rachel, provided updates. "Brian Foster has perfect attendance," Rachel reported during one of their weekly meetings. "His supervisor says he's the most reliable person on the team. Several employees have specifically praised his work." And Jennifer Walsh? Also doing well. She stays late when needed without being asked. Miguel says she's a fast learner and a team player. Marcus nodded. He was glad to hear it, though he remained cautious. 6 months was not enough time to judge whether someone had truly changed. But it was a start. One evening, Marcus was working late in his office. The building was mostly empty. Most employees had gone home hours ago. Around 9 p.m., Marcus decided to leave. As he walked through the darkened office, he saw a light on in one of the conference rooms. Jennifer was inside cleaning. She was wiping down the large glass whiteboard, carefully removing every mark. She did not notice Marcus standing in the doorway watching her work. She was focused on her task, making sure everything was perfect. Marcus cleared his throat. Jennifer jumped, startled. She turned and saw him. "Mr. Thompson," she said, clearly nervous. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were still here." "It's fine," Marcus said. "I was just leaving." "You're doing good work." "Thank you," Jennifer said quietly. "That means a lot." Marcus was about to leave when Jennifer spoke again. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something?" "Of course." Jennifer set down her cleaning supplies and faced him. "Why did you really hire me? After everything I did, why did you give me this chance?" Marcus had been expecting this question eventually. He walked into the conference room and leaned against the table. "Do you know what the hardest part of building Fair Hire was?" Marcus asked. Jennifer shook her head. "It wasn't the technology or the business model. It was figuring out what kind of leader I wanted to be. After what happened at TechVision, I was angry. I wanted to prove everyone wrong. I wanted success so I could shove it in the faces of people like you and Brian." Jennifer winced at his words but did not look away. "But my mother taught me something important," Marcus continued. "She said that success built on anger and revenge is hollow. Real success comes from purpose and values, so I had to decide what my values were. Did I want to be someone who held grudges and sought revenge, or did I want to be someone who believed in fairness, second chances, and the possibility of change? You chose the latter," Jennifer said softly. "I chose to build a company based on the principles I wished existed in the world. One of those principles is that people deserve to be judged on who they are now, not who they used to be. If I preach that philosophy but don't practice it, then I'm a hypocrite." "So hiring us was about maintaining your principles?" "Partly," Marcus admitted. "But also I've learned that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts anyone else. When I saw your names on those applications, my first instinct was revenge. I could have rejected you immediately. But then I thought about what that would make me. I'd be no better than you were. I'd be making the same mistake, judging people unfairly instead of giving them a real chance." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm grateful. More grateful than I can express. This job saved my life in more ways than one. It gave me income, yes, but more importantly, it gave me a path to becoming a better person." "Are you a better person?" Marcus asked directly. Jennifer thought carefully before answering. "I'm trying to be. I'm learning to see my own biases and challenge them. I'm listening to people I would have dismissed before. I'm questioning assumptions I've held my whole life. I volunteer at a community center now, working with teenagers from backgrounds different from mine. I'm reading, learning, growing. Am I there yet? No, but I'm on the journey and I won't stop." Marcus studied her face. He saw sincerity there, not performance. Jennifer had genuinely changed, or at least was genuinely trying to change. "Keep going," Marcus said. "That's all I ask." 3 weeks later, something happened that tested Brian's transformation. He was cleaning the executive floor early one morning when he overheard a conversation. 2 employees, both young white men, were talking in an office. They did not realize Brian was nearby. "Did you see the resume for that developer position?" one said. "The guy's name is Jamal Washington. Probably another diversity hire." "I know," the other replied. "HR is pushing this inclusion stuff too hard. We should hire the best candidates, not fill quotas." Brian stopped moving. His cleaning cart stood still in the hallway. He felt anger rising in his chest, but not at the candidate they were discussing. He was angry at the men in that office for saying the same kinds of things he used to say. Brian had a choice. He could walk away, mind his own business, keep his head down. Or he could do what Marcus had asked. "If you see discrimination or unfair treatment happening in this company, will you speak up about it?" Brian walked into the office. Both men looked up, surprised to see a janitor interrupting them. "Excuse me," Brian said firmly. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." What you're saying is wrong. You're making assumptions about a candidate based on his name. That's the definition of bias. If you work here, you should know better. The two men stared at him in shock. Who do you think you are? One of them said. You're a janitor. This doesn't concern you. I'm an employee of this company, Brian replied. And this does concern me. What you're doing goes against everything Fair Hire stands for. If you have concerns about a candidate, base them on qualifications, not names or assumptions. We don't have to listen to this, the other man said. Get back to your cleaning. I will, Brian said. But I'm also reporting this conversation to HR. Everyone here is supposed to uphold the company's values, regardless of their position. Brian walked out before they could respond. His hands were shaking, but he felt good. He had stood up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. He reported the conversation to Sarah Chen that afternoon. Sarah took it seriously and launched an investigation. Marcus heard about the incident from Sarah. She was impressed by Brian's courage. He didn't have to say anything, Sarah told Marcus. He could have ignored it, but he spoke up knowing it might create problems for him. Marcus called Brian into his office the next day. Brian arrived nervous, worried that he had overstepped. You reported a conversation you overheard, Marcus said. Yes, sir. I know it might seem like I was eavesdropping, but I happened to hear it and I couldn't stay silent. You did the right thing, Marcus said firmly. That conversation violated our company policies. Those employees have been given written warnings and mandatory additional training. I want to thank you for speaking up. Brian was relieved. I meant what I said in my interview. I promised I'd speak up if I saw discrimination. I had to keep that promise. You're not the same person who interviewed me 3 years ago, Marcus observed. No, sir, I'm not, and I hope I never go back to being that person. Marcus made a decision. Brian, your probation period is over. As of today, you're a permanent employee. More than that, I'm promoting you. I want you to join our company culture team. You'll still do facilities work part-time, but you'll also help develop and deliver our bias training programs. You have a unique perspective that could help others understand the real consequences of discrimination. Brian was stunned. Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Marcus replied. Use your experience to help others learn what you've learned. Yes, Brian said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. I won't let you down. Similar opportunities arose for Jennifer. She began volunteering to help organize company events, bringing a level of detail and dedication that impressed everyone. When Fair Hire's community outreach coordinator left for another position, Marcus offered Jennifer the role. She would work with local schools and organizations, helping create pathways for underrepresented students to enter the tech industry. Me? Jennifer said when Marcus extended the offer. Are you sure? Given my history? Your history is exactly why you're the right person, Marcus explained. You understand bias from both sides now. You can speak authentically about change and growth. You can connect with people who need to hear that message. Jennifer accepted. She threw herself into the role with passion. She visited schools, organized mentorship programs, and created partnerships with community organizations. She worked with young people who faced the same barriers she had once helped create. 1 year after they started as janitors, Brian and Jennifer were both in new roles, using their experiences to make Fair Hire's mission stronger. They occasionally saw each other at company meetings now. They did not speak much, but there was an understanding between them. They had both been given extraordinary grace, and they were determined to honor that gift. Marcus's mother, Diana, visited the office one afternoon. Marcus gave her a tour, showing her everything they had built. As they walked through the building, they passed Brian, who was leading a training session on unconscious bias. Who's that? Diana asked. That's Brian Foster. He's one of the people who rejected me at TechVision. Diana stopped walking. What? Marcus explained everything. His mother listened in amazement. You hired them? Diana said. After what they did? I did. Why? Marcus smiled. Because you raised me to be better than my worst experiences. You taught me that holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it. You showed me that real strength is choosing compassion when you have every right to choose revenge. Diana's eyes filled with tears. She hugged her son tightly. I'm so proud of you, not because you built a successful company, but because you became a good man. Later that month, Marcus was invited to speak at a major tech conference. The topic was leadership and company culture. He stood on stage in front of thousands of people and told his story. He talked about the discrimination he had faced, about starting Fair Hire, about success and values. Then he told them about Brian and Jennifer. Two of the people who treated me most cruelly now work for my company, Marcus said. Not because I'm a saint, but because I believe in the principles my company stands for. If I preach fairness and second chances but don't practice them, then everything I've built is meaningless. Those two people have changed. They've worked hard to become better. They've contributed meaningfully to our mission. That's what growth looks like. That's what redemption looks like. The audience was silent, absorbed in the story. Success isn't just about revenue or market share, Marcus continued. It's about who you choose to be when you have power. Do you use that power to hurt people who hurt you? Or do you use it to break cycles of harm and create possibilities for change? I chose the latter. And that choice made me truly successful in a way that money never could. The audience rose in applause. Among them in the back row sat Brian and Jennifer. They were providing security for the event, making sure everything ran smoothly. They stood and applauded along with everyone else, tears streaming down their faces. After the speech, people approached Marcus with questions and comments. One man, a CEO of another tech company, pulled Marcus aside. That story about hiring the people who discriminated against you, the man said. Was that real? Every word, Marcus confirmed. I don't know if I could do that. I'd want revenge. I wanted revenge too, Marcus admitted. But revenge wouldn't have changed anything. It wouldn't have made the world better. It wouldn't have made me better. Choosing compassion did both. The CEO shook his head in admiration. You're a better man than most. No, Marcus said. I'm just a man who had a mother who taught him right from wrong. And who decided that when the world gave me power, I'd use it to lift people up instead of push them down. Marcus looked across the room and saw Brian and Jennifer at their posts. They caught his eye and nodded respectfully. Marcus nodded back. 3 years ago, they had tried to humiliate him. They had tried to make him feel small and worthless. They had used their power to hurt him. Today they worked for him. Not because he had crushed them or sought revenge, but because he had chosen a different path. He had chosen to prove that people could change, that grace was stronger than grudges, and that real success meant living by your values even when it was difficult. As Marcus left the conference that evening, he thought about his journey. From that terrible interview to this moment, everything had led him here. The pain, the anger, the determination, the success, and finally the choice to show mercy. His mother had been right all along. Real success was not measured by the size of your bank account or the respect of your peers. It was measured by what you did when you had the power to hurt someone who had hurt you, and you chose kindness instead. Marcus had built a successful company. But more importantly, he had become a man his mother could be proud of, a man who broke cycles instead of perpetuating them, a man who chose light over darkness, and that, Marcus knew, was the greatest success of all.